collapsed during a heated family court hearing over my late grandmother's inheritance. As I seized on the courtroom floor, my sister Bryn stood frozen, clutching my pill bottle in her purse. Our parents rushed forward, but the judge immediately called for medical intervention. Paramedics discovered I hadn't taken my epilepsy medication in 3 days. When they found the missing pills in Bryn's designer handbag, the courtroom erupted. The judge ordered an immediate investigation, and my lawyer whispered that everything had just changed in our favor. My name is Leah, and I'm 28 years old. I work as a graphic designer from my modest apartment in Portland, Oregon. I've lived with epilepsy since I was 16, after a car accident left me with a traumatic brain injury. The condition isn't who I am, but it's something I manage every single day. 2 pills in the morning, 2 at night. Without them, my brain becomes a ticking time bomb. I've built a careful routine around my medication, because missing even 1 dose puts me at serious risk. My younger sister Bryn is 25, and she's always been the golden child in our family. She's beautiful, charismatic, and has this way of making people want to take care of her. The problem is, she's never held a steady job, never paid her own rent, and has been bailed out by our parents, Frank and Diane, more times than I can count. Where I learned independence early because of my health challenges, Bryn learned that tears and charm could get her anything she wanted. Everything changed 6 months ago, when our grandmother Margaret died. Margaret had owned a charming bed and breakfast in coastal Maine, a property worth approximately $800,000. The place had been in our family for 3 generations, with white shutters, a wraparound porch, and a view of the Atlantic that took your breath away. Margaret's will stated that the property should go to the granddaughter who needs it most and will care for it properly. I'd visited Margaret every summer growing up, helping her bake muffins for guests and learning how to arrange flowers for the breakfast tables. Even after my epilepsy diagnosis, I made the trip whenever I could. We'd video chat every Sunday evening, talking about books and art and her dreams for the property. Bryn, on the other hand, visited maybe twice in the last decade. She found the place boring and outdated. But the moment the will was read, our parents, Frank and Diane, immediately assumed the bed and breakfast should go to Bryn. Their reasoning made my stomach turn. Bryn needs it more because she doesn't have a career. Bryn would benefit most because she's struggling. Never mind that I had the stability and work ethic to actually maintain the property. Never mind that I actually loved the place and understood what it meant to our family. The first time Bryn stole my medication, I thought it was a misunderstanding. I came home from a long day designing a logo for a coffee shop client, exhausted and ready to take my evening dose. When I opened my medicine cabinet, I noticed my pill bottle looked lighter than it should. I counted the remaining pills. 4 were missing. I heard noise in my living room and walked out to find Bryn lounging on my couch, scrolling through her phone. She had a spare key to my apartment, something I'd given her years ago for emergencies. I held up the pill bottle. Bryn, did you take some of my medication? She didn't even look up from her phone. Oh yeah, I borrowed a few. I've been having really bad anxiety lately, and I heard that epilepsy medication can help calm your nerves. My heart started pounding. These aren't anxiety pills. They're serious prescription medication. You can't just take them randomly. Finally, she glanced at me, her expression annoyed. God, Leah, you're always so dramatic. I only took 4. You have plenty left. That's not the point. These control my seizures. They're not something you experiment with. Bryn stood up, grabbing her designer purse. You know what? I'm dealing with real problems right now. Mom told me you should be more supportive. Sharing is caring, remember? Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was our mother, Diane. I answered, still frustrated. Leah, honey, Bryn just texted me that you're upset with her. Mom, she took my epilepsy medication. She can't do that. There was a pause. Well, your sister is going through a tough time. She's very sensitive, and she needed something to help her anxiety. You have a whole bottle. Can't you spare a few pills for family? I felt like I'd been punched. These aren't vitamins, Mom. They're prescription medication that keeps me from having seizures. Stop being so possessive, Leah. Sharing is caring. Your sister needed help, and you should be the bigger person here. I hung up feeling gaslit and confused. Had I overreacted? No, I knew I hadn't, but my family had this way of making me question my own reality. I let it go and called my pharmacy for an early refill, explaining what happened. The pharmacist was sympathetic and helped me out. 2 weeks later, it happened again. 6 pills missing this time. I knew immediately it was Bryn. I texted her, trying to stay calm. Bryn, my medication is missing again. I need it back. Her response came quickly. Stop being so dramatic about your condition. You're just trying to make yourself seem special. I took them because I needed them more than you do. I stared at my phone in disbelief. My condition? As if epilepsy was something I'd made up for attention. My father Frank called me an hour later, his voice tight with anger. Leah, your mother told me you're attacking Bryn again over some pills. What's wrong with you? Dad, she's stealing my medication. I could have a seizure without it. Your sister has always been more sensitive than you. She needs more support. You need to be the bigger person and stop making everything about you. I realized in that moment that my family had never truly understood my epilepsy. To them, it was an inconvenience, maybe even an exaggeration. They'd never seen me have a major seizure. They'd never watched me lose control of my body, bite my tongue until it bled, wake up confused and terrified. To them, I just took pills twice a day and seemed fine, so how serious could it really be? 3 weeks after that conversation, I received a call that changed everything. The estate lawyer handling Margaret's will wanted to schedule a formal inheritance hearing. There was a complication. Apparently, Bryn had been meeting secretly with a real estate developer named Jason who wanted to purchase the bed and breakfast. He planned to tear it down and build luxury condos on the waterfront property. The lawyer had discovered emails between Bryn and this developer. She was planning to sell the moment she inherited, pocketing close to $1 million and destroying 3 generations of family history. I sat in my apartment that evening, looking at photos of Margaret's bed and breakfast on my phone, the white rocking chairs on the porch, the garden where Margaret grew herbs for her cooking, the guest book filled with notes from families who'd stayed there and fallen in love with the place. This wasn't just about money or property anymore. This was about preserving something meaningful, something that represented the best parts of our family. I made a decision that night. I was going to fight for that inheritance. I was going to honor my grandmother's legacy, even if it meant going to war with my own family. I had no idea how much that decision would cost me. I hired a lawyer named Douglas, a man in his early 50s with silver hair and a reputation for winning estate cases. His office smelled like old books and coffee, and when I told him my story, he listened carefully, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Your grandmother's will is clear, he said after I finished. She wanted the property to go to someone who would care for it. We can build a strong case showing you're that person. Over the next several weeks, I gathered evidence. I printed emails between Margaret and me, discussing the bed and breakfast, and my ideas for keeping it running. I collected photos from my visits over the years. I even found Margaret's handwritten journals in a box she'd left me, journals where she wrote about how proud she was of my resilience and work ethic. Leah has her grandmother's spirit, one entry read. She knows what it means to work for something and appreciate it. That place will be safe in her hands. I created a business plan, showing exactly how I'd maintain the bed and breakfast. I'd move to Maine, hire a small staff, and continue the tradition Margaret had started. I wasn't planning to get rich. I was planning to honor her. But the moment Bryn discovered I was contesting the inheritance, everything escalated. She launched a social media campaign that made me look like a monster. She posted long Facebook updates about how I was trying to steal from her, how I'd abandoned our grandmother in her final years, how I was motivated purely by greed. She twisted every fact, turned every truth into a lie. Our parents shared her posts. Family friends I'd known my entire life started commenting, calling me selfish. People I'd grown up with sent me messages asking how I could do this to my own sister. The stress was overwhelming. I started having absence seizures, brief moments where I'd stare into space, completely disconnected from reality. They only lasted a few seconds, but they were warning signs that my epilepsy was getting harder to control. Then came the third medication theft. I'd just gotten home from a deposition, a grueling 3-hour session where Bryn's lawyer had tried to paint me as a neglectful granddaughter. I was exhausted, emotionally drained. I went to my medicine cabinet to take my evening dose. The bottle was gone. Completely gone. I searched everywhere, my panic rising. I checked the bathroom, the kitchen, my bedroom. Nothing. Then I saw a note on my kitchen counter, written in Bryn's looping handwriting. Borrowed these for my nerves. You'll be fine for a few days. Stop being so stingy. 30 pills. An entire month's supply. Gone. I called Bryn immediately, my hands shaking. You took my medication. All of it. I need it back right now. She laughed. Actually laughed. I already took some. They don't even do anything, Leah. You're such a faker. You just want attention. Bryn, I'm not joking. Without that medication, I will have a seizure. Please, just bring them back. Stop being so dramatic. You'll be fine. She hung up. I called my parents next, begging for help. Surely they'd understand the severity this time. Diane answered. Leah, Bryn told me you were going to call and make a scene. Mom, she took an entire month of my medication. I need it back. This is dangerous. Bryn needed them more than you do. She's been so stressed with this inheritance situation that you created. You're young and healthy. She's fragile. I have epilepsy. I'm not healthy without my medication. My father took the phone. If you weren't so stressed about this inheritance nonsense, you wouldn't need pills anyway. This is all your fault, Leah. You started this fight. I hung up and immediately called the police. An officer came to my apartment, took a report, listened to my story. But without proof that Bryn had actually taken the pills, he said it was a civil matter. He suggested I get a restraining order or take her to small claims court. But I could have a seizure before any of that gets resolved, I said. I understand, ma'am, but there's not much we can do without evidence. My doctor wrote an emergency prescription, but when I went to the pharmacy, they informed me that my insurance wouldn't cover an early refill. The out-of-pocket cost was $450. I'd been spending all my savings on lawyer fees. I didn't have that kind of money lying around. I left the pharmacy empty-handed, terrified. I had maybe 3 pills left, pills I'd found loose in my purse. That would last me a day and a half if I rationed carefully. 2 days later, I received a letter from Bryn's lawyer. She was countersuing me, claiming I'd been harassing her and causing her emotional distress. The letter included screenshots of text messages, but they'd been edited to make me look abusive. Sentences were cut out, context removed. My desperate pleas for my medication back twisted into threats. The letter also stated that Frank and Diane had agreed to testify against me in court, confirming that I'd always been the difficult child, that I'd neglected Margaret, that Bryn deserved the inheritance. I met with Douglas the next morning. He read through the documents, his expression growing darker. They're going to paint you as unstable, he said. We need to be very strategic here. Your family is playing dirty. What do? We fight back with truth. We have evidence on our side. But Leah, I need to know you're strong enough for this. Court is going to be stressful, and stress can trigger your seizures, right? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Can you handle it? I have to, I said. This isn't just about the property anymore. It's about my dignity. It's about proving that I'm not the person they're trying to make me out to be. Douglas looked at me for a long moment. Okay. Then, we prepare for war. I left his office feeling determined but terrified. I was about to go into a courtroom and face my entire family, all of them united against me, and I was going to do it without the medication that kept me safe. I didn't tell Douglas that part. I was too afraid he'd try to delay the hearing, and I couldn't afford any more delays. The court date was set for 3 weeks away. I just had to survive until then. 5 days before the court hearing, I ran completely out of medication. The last pill dissolved on my tongue one Tuesday morning, and I knew I was walking into dangerous territory. My body had grown dependent on the steady presence of those chemicals in my bloodstream. Without them, my brain's electrical activity would become increasingly unstable. The warning signs started almost immediately. I'd be working on a design project and suddenly smell something that wasn't there, a strange metallic scent. These were auras, sensory distortions that often preceded seizures. My muscles would twitch randomly. My concentration fractured into pieces. I didn't tell Douglas. I didn't tell anyone. I was terrified that admitting my vulnerability would give Bryn's lawyer ammunition to paint me as incompetent, unreliable, unfit to inherit anything. The pre-trial mediation was scheduled for 3 days before the actual hearing. Both families were required to meet with a neutral mediator to see if we could reach a settlement without going to court. I walked into that conference room feeling like I was floating outside my own body, disconnected and strange. Bryn arrived wearing an expensive navy dress and pearls that I recognized immediately. They'd belonged to Margaret. Our grandmother's pearls wrapped around my sister's throat like a trophy. Frank and Diane sat on Bryn's side of the table. They didn't look at me when I entered. It was like I'd become invisible, erased from the family. The mediator, a tired-looking woman in her 60s named Patricia, tried her best. I've reviewed both cases. The will is somewhat ambiguous, which is why we're here. I'd like to suggest a compromise. What if you split the property 50-50, sell it, and divide the proceeds equally? I would have agreed in a heartbeat. Half of $800,000 would be life-changing money, enough to start over somewhere new, enough to finally feel secure. But Bryn crossed her arms. No. Grandmother wanted me to have it. She loved me more, and everyone knows it. I deserve the full inheritance. Miss Bryn, the mediator said patiently, your grandmother's will doesn't actually name either of you specifically. It requires interpretation. Then interpret it correctly. Leah doesn't need this. She has her little design business. I have nothing. I need this more. Douglas spoke up. Your need isn't based on financial hardship. It's based on poor life choices and an unwillingness to support yourself. Bryn's lawyer objected, and the mediation devolved into arguments. We took a 15-minute break, and that's when I overheard something that changed everything. I went to the bathroom down the hall. As I was washing my hands, I heard Bryn's voice from one of the stalls, talking on her phone. Don't worry, Jason. The bed and breakfast will be yours in a week. That old place should have been torn down years ago. I'm getting $1.2 million once you renovate the land. We can finally take that trip to Europe. My hands froze under the running water. She wasn't just planning to sell. She'd already made a deal. She was going to destroy Margaret's legacy for vacation money. I fumbled for my phone, trying to open the recording app. My hands were shaking so badly that I nearly dropped it. By the time I got the app open, I heard the stall door unlock. Bryn stepped out and saw me standing there, phone in hand. Her eyes narrowed. Were you recording me? You're selling to that developer. You're going to tear down Margaret's bed and breakfast. She walked over and snatched my phone from my hands before I could react. She scrolled through it, found nothing recorded, and handed it back with a smile. You're so pathetic, Leah. Always trying to play the victim. Always trying to make me look bad. No one's going to believe you. She walked out, leaving me alone in the bathroom, my reflection staring back at me from the mirror. I looked terrible, dark circles under my eyes, skin too pale. I was falling apart. The mediation ended with no resolution. We'd see each other in court in 3 days. Those 3 days were the longest of my life. I felt the seizure building inside me like a storm gathering strength. My body was screaming warnings that I couldn't afford to hear. 2 nights before court, I finally managed to scrape together enough money for a partial prescription. 10 pills. Enough to last just over 2 days if I was careful. I put them in a locked box in my bedroom, terrified of losing them. The night before court, I worked late on a client project, trying to distract myself. When I came home around 11 at night, I knew something was wrong the moment I opened my door. Things were slightly out of place. A drawer not quite closed. A chair moved. I ran to my bedroom. The locked box was open, smashed with something heavy. The pills were gone. On my kitchen counter, another note in Bryn's handwriting. Oops. Guess you should have shared. See you in court, sis. I called the police again. A different officer came this time. A young woman who seemed genuinely sympathetic. She took photos, filed a report, but said the same thing as before. Without concrete proof, it was my word against Bryn's. I have to go to court tomorrow, I told the officer. Without my medication, I could have a seizure. Can you get an emergency prescription? Not before tomorrow morning, and I can't afford to delay the hearing. She looked at me with something like pity. I'm sorry. I wish there was more I could do. After she left, I sat on my couch and cried. Not gentle tears, but gut-wrenching sobs that made my whole body shake. I was so tired of fighting, tired of being treated like I didn't matter, tired of a family that chose cruelty over basic human decency. But underneath the exhaustion was something else. Anger. Pure, burning anger. I was done being the bigger person. I was done protecting people who wanted to hurt me. At 6 a.m, I showed up at Douglas's office with everything. I printed out the police reports. I had screenshots of Bryn's cruel text messages. And I'd received something else, something that arrived in my email at 3 a.m. An anonymous message from someone calling themselves a friend attached were photos of Bryn at a luxury spa 3 days earlier. In one photo, she was holding up my prescription bottle, smiling at the camera. The Instagram caption read, "Taking care of my anxiety with these little helpers. Thanks, sis." This is proof, Douglas said, staring at the photos. This is actual evidence of theft. Can we use it in court today? Absolutely. But then he looked at me closely, really looked at me. Leah, you don't look well. Are you okay to testify? I lied without hesitation. I'm fine. I found some pills. I'm ready to do this. The truth was, I hadn't taken my medication in 7 days. My brain was a bomb waiting to explode, but I was so close to the finish line, I just had to make it through one more day. One more day, and justice would finally be served. I had no idea how right I was. The courthouse in downtown Portland was an imposing building of gray stone and tall windows. I'd been there twice before for depositions, but walking in that morning felt different. Final. Like everything in my life had been leading to this single moment. Douglas met me in the lobby. Ready? I nodded, not trusting my voice. My hands were trembling, and I shoved them in my coat pockets so he wouldn't see. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Family court. Judge Patricia Holloway presiding. I'd researched her. 61 years old, 30 years on the bench, a reputation for no-nonsense fairness. If anyone would see through Bryn's lies, it would be her. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with wooden benches and fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly. I walked down the aisle and saw them, Frank and Diane, sitting on Bryn's side of the room. My own parents, lined up against me like I was a stranger. Diane glanced at me, then quickly looked away. Frank kept his eyes straight ahead. Bryn sat at the defendant's table, wearing a cream-colored suit and Margaret's pearls. When she saw me, she smiled. Actually smiled, like this was all a game she'd already won. I felt dizzy as I took my seat next to Douglas. The room tilted slightly, and I gripped the edge of the table. You okay? Douglas whispered. Just nervous. Judge Holloway entered, and we all stood. She was a small woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. She settled into her chair and opened the case file. Good morning. We're here regarding the estate of Margaret Catherine Walsh, specifically the disposition of property located at 17 Ocean View Road in Camden, Maine. Let's begin with opening statements. Bryn's lawyer stood first. His name was Richard, and he had the smooth voice of someone who'd convinced juries of 1,000 lies. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case. My client, Bryn Walsh, was the devoted granddaughter who maintained a close relationship with the deceased. She visited regularly, called frequently, and was explicitly told by Mrs. Walsh that the bed and breakfast would be hers. The plaintiff, Leah Walsh, showed minimal interest in the property until she learned of its value. This is a case of opportunism, plain and simple. Every word was a lie, but he delivered it with such confidence that I saw the judge taking notes. Then Douglas stood. Your Honor, we will demonstrate that Miss Leah Walsh had a deep, meaningful relationship with her grandmother spanning decades. We have documentation, journals, and evidence showing she was the granddaughter Mrs. Walsh trusted to preserve the family legacy. Furthermore, we will show that Miss Bryn Walsh plans to immediately sell the property to developers who will demolish it, directly contradicting the deceased's wishes. Judge Holloway nodded. Noted. Call your first witness. The next hour was torture. Bryn's lawyer called character witnesses, family friends who testified that Bryn had always been such a sweet girl. They talked about how devoted she seemed, how she'd mentioned visiting Margaret all the time. None of them could provide specific dates or details. It was all vague impressions and assumptions. Then Douglas called me to the stand. I stood, and the room swayed. I grabbed the table for balance, waited for the dizziness to pass, then walked to the witness stand on unsteady legs. The bailiff swore me in, and I sat down. The chair felt too hard, the lights too bright. Douglas started with easy questions. My name, my age, my relationship to Margaret. I answered in a voice that didn't sound like mine, telling stories about summers in Maine, about learning to bake blueberry muffins and arrange wildflowers. I talked about our video calls every Sunday, about how Margaret would tell me stories about running the bed and breakfast through good times and bad. Did your grandmother ever discuss the property's future with you? Douglas asked. Yes. She told me she wanted it to stay in the family. She said some places have souls, and the bed and breakfast soul was made of all the families who'd stayed there and all the memories created there. She didn't want it turned into condos or vacation rentals. She wanted it to remain what it was. Douglas presented Margaret's journals. The judge read selected passages aloud, passages about me, about my strength and character. Leah understands what it means to fight for something. One entry read, she's had to fight for her health, her independence, her place in the world. She won't let this place fade away. I watched Bryn shift uncomfortably in her seat. Then came the cross-examination. Richard approached with a friendly smile that didn't reach his eyes. Miss Walsh, you work as a graphic designer, is that correct? Yes. And that's freelance work? No steady employment? I have regular clients. I work from home. So you're unemployed in the traditional sense. I'm self-employed. How much did you earn last year? Douglas objected. Relevance? I'm establishing financial motive, Your Honor. The judge allowed it. I had to admit I'd made $32,000 the previous year. Not much by most standards. Richard pounced. And the bed and breakfast is worth $800,000. That's quite a windfall for someone in your financial position. I don't want to sell it. I want to run it. Convenient that you suddenly developed this passion for the family business after your grandmother died. That's not true. Miss Walsh, you have epilepsy, correct? My stomach dropped. Yes, and that's considered a disability, is it not? Douglas objected again. Your Honor, my client's medical condition is not relevant to her ability to inherit property. I'll allow it, but get to the point quickly, Counselor, Richard continued. Epilepsy affects your mental state, doesn't it? You've had seizures that caused confusion, disorientation, only during the seizures themselves. But you take medication for this condition. Serious medication that affects brain chemistry. I saw where he was going. He was trying to paint me as mentally unstable, unreliable. The medication prevents seizures. It doesn't affect my cognition. Have you been taking your medication as prescribed recently, Miss Walsh? The question hung in the air. I could lie under oath, or I could tell the truth and destroy my case. I gripped the armrest of the witness chair. My vision started to blur at the edges. I've had some trouble accessing my prescription. Trouble accessing it? Can you elaborate? My heart was racing now, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The courtroom lights seemed to pulse. My medication has been stolen multiple times over the past 3 months. Stolen? By whom? I looked directly at Bryn. By my sister. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged her gavel. Richard was speaking, objecting, but his voice sounded distant and warped. I tried to stand, to explain, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. The aura I'd been fighting all morning suddenly intensified. The metallic smell, the sense of disconnection, time stretching and contracting. I heard Douglas saying my name, saw the judge leaning forward, felt myself trying to step down from the witness stand. Then the seizure hit. My body locked up, every muscle contracting at once. I fell forward, collapsing onto the courtroom floor. I was aware of it happening, but completely unable to control it. My limbs began to convulse violently. I bit down on my tongue and tasted blood. I heard screaming, people shouting, chairs scraping. Then Judge Holloway's voice, clear and commanding. Someone call 911. We need paramedics now. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was Bryn's face, pale and terrified, staring down at me from across the room. I came back to consciousness in pieces. First, the sensation of something soft under my head, then voices, urgent and professional. The pressure of fingers on my wrist, checking my pulse. She's coming around. Leah, can you hear me? My name is Carlos. I'm a paramedic. You've had a seizure. Try to stay still. I opened my eyes and immediately regretted it. The fluorescent lights were blinding. I was lying on the courtroom floor, looking up at the ceiling tiles. A Hispanic man in his 30s leaned over me, holding a stethoscope. That's good. You're doing great. Do you know where you are? My mouth felt strange, full of cotton. Court, I managed to say. My tongue throbbed where I'd bitten it. That's right. You're in family court. You had a tonic-clonic seizure. It lasted about 90 seconds. Your vitals are stabilizing now. Memory came flooding back. The testimony. Richard's questions. The moment I felt my control slipping away. Do you have epilepsy? Carlos asked. Yes. When did you last take your medication? I had to think. The days blurred together. 7 days. Maybe 8. Carlos's expression darkened. 7 days? That's extremely dangerous. Where's your medication now? I tried to sit up, but he gently pushed me back down. Someone took it. Who took it? I looked around the courtroom. People were standing in clusters, whispering. The judge was speaking quietly with the bailiff. Douglas knelt a few feet away, his face creased with worry. And there was Bryn, standing frozen by the defendant's table, her face ashen. My sister, I said. Judge Holloway heard me and stepped closer. Everyone, please clear some space. Give the paramedics room to work. Carlos had another paramedic with him, a young woman named Jennifer. They were checking my blood pressure, my oxygen levels, asking me questions to assess my cognitive function. Leah, this is very serious, Carlos said. Going without epilepsy medication for a week can cause status epilepticus, where seizures don't stop. You could have died. Judge Holloway's voice cut through the room like a knife. Did she just say her medication was taken by her sister? Carlos looked up at the judge. That's what she said, Your Honor. The judge's face transformed from concern to cold fury. Bailiff, I want every bag and purse in this courtroom searched, right now. Richard immediately protested. Your Honor, you can't search personal belongings without cause. A woman just had a potentially fatal seizure because she was deprived of necessary medication. That's cause. Bailiff, proceed. The bailiff, a stocky man in his 50s, began going through the room. He checked Douglas's briefcase, my purse, the court reporter's bag. Then he reached Bryn. "Ma'am, I need to check your purse." Bryn clutched her designer handbag to her chest. "No, you can't. That's private property." Judge Holloway stood up. "Miss Walsh, you can open that bag voluntarily, or I will hold you in contempt of court and have it opened by force. Choose." Bryn's hands were shaking. She looked at our parents as if they could save her. Frank started to stand, but Diane pulled him back down. Slowly, Bryn opened her purse. The bailiff reached in and pulled out a prescription bottle. He read the label aloud. "Levetiracetam, prescribed to Leah Walsh." The courtroom exploded. Gasps. Shocked murmurs. I heard Diane cry out, "Bryn, what is that?" Bryn stammered. "She gave those to me. I told you. I have anxiety. She gave them to me to help." "That's a lie," I said, my voice stronger now. Carlos helped me sit up slowly. "She's been stealing my medication for months." Judge Holloway took the pill bottle from the bailiff and examined it. "This prescription was filled 12 days ago. It should be nearly full." She opened the bottle and counted. "There are 23 pills here. Where are the rest?" Bryn said nothing. "Officers," the judge called to the courthouse security. 2 uniformed officers entered through the back door. "I'm ordering everyone to remain in this courtroom. This is now a criminal investigation." Carlos was preparing an injection. "Leah, I'm giving you emergency medication to prevent another seizure. This is lorazepam. It'll make you drowsy, but it's necessary." I nodded and felt the needle prick my arm. Within seconds, a warm calm spread through my body. The jagged edges of panic smoothed out. "We need to transport you to the hospital," Jennifer said, but Judge Holloway held up a hand. "Stabilize her here if possible. I need her statement while we have everyone present." Carlos checked my vitals again, then nodded. "She's stable enough for a few minutes, but then she needs to go." The judge pulled a chair next to where I sat on the floor. She spoke gently, a complete change from her courtroom voice. "Leah, I need you to tell me exactly what happened with your medication. Take your time." So I did. With everyone watching, I told the whole story. The first theft 3 months ago, my mother telling me that sharing is caring. The second theft, my father saying I was being dramatic. The third theft, losing a month's supply. The police reports that went nowhere. The break-in 2 nights ago. The note Bryn left. I told them about the cost of emergency prescriptions I couldn't afford. About rationing pills. About coming to court knowing I was risking a seizure but feeling like I had no choice. Judge Holloway listened without interrupting. When I finished, she turned to face the courtroom. "Is everything she said true?" No one spoke. Then Douglas stood. "Your Honor, I have evidence." He pulled out his laptop and showed the photos. Bryn at the spa, holding my prescription bottle, smiling. The Instagram post. "These photos were taken 3 days ago and sent to us anonymously." The judge examined them. "Miss Bryn, is this you?" Bryn stared at the floor. "Answer me." "Yes," Bryn whispered. "Did you steal your sister's medication?" Bryn's lawyer tried to intervene. "Your Honor, my client doesn't have to answer without legal counsel present for criminal matters." "Fine. Officers, take Miss Bryn into custody for questioning regarding theft of prescription medication and reckless endangerment." One of the officers approached Bryn. She started crying. I didn't think she actually needed them. She always seemed fine. I thought she was exaggerating. Diane was crying too now. "Bryn, how could you?" But Carlos had found something else. He'd been examining the pill bottle, opening it, looking at the pills themselves. Now he looked up at the judge with alarm. "Your Honor, these pills have been tampered with." Everyone froze. "What do you mean?" the judge asked. Carlos poured the pills onto a clean paper towel. "Look, these pills are supposed to be blue, all the same size and shape, but some of these are white. These aren't levetiracetam. There's something else." He picked up one of the white pills and examined it closely. "These look like caffeine tablets. Someone replaced some of the real medication with Look Alex." Every eye in the room turned to Bryn. Judge Holloway's voice was ice. Miss Bryn, did you replace your sister's medication with fake pills? Bryn's face crumbled. Tears poured down her cheeks, smearing her makeup. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think she actually needed them. She always acts so normal. I thought it was all in her head. I thought if she believed they were real, they'd still work. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Diane stood up, her voice breaking. Bryn, what have you done? Your sister could have died. Frank looked like he'd been punched. This isn't possible. You wouldn't. But Bryn was falling apart. I was jealous, okay? I was jealous that she's so responsible and successful and everyone respects her. I wanted the inheritance, and I knew if she looked unstable in court, I'd win. I wanted her to have a seizure. I just didn't think. I didn't realize. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Douglas stood, his voice shaking with controlled rage. Your Honor, this isn't just theft. This is attempted murder. Judge Holloway held up her hand. That determination will be made by the district attorney. Officers, take Miss Bryn out of my courtroom. I don't want to look at her anymore. As the officers led Bryn away, she looked back at me one last time. Leah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I looked away. I had nothing to say to her. Carlos and Jennifer helped me onto a stretcher. Okay, we're taking you to the hospital now. You need to be monitored for at least 24 hours. As they wheeled me out of the courtroom, I heard Judge Holloway's voice one last time. This court is adjourned. We'll reconvene in 1 week. And Mr. Richard, tell your client she just lost far more than an inheritance. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. I'd been there for 6 hours, drifting in and out of sleep while nurses checked my vitals every hour. The emergency medication had made me drowsy, and the emotional crash after the courtroom drama left me completely exhausted. Dr. Sarah Chen, my neurologist, arrived around 7 in the evening. She was a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and an absolute refusal to sugarcoat medical realities. She sat down next to my bed and shook her head. Leah, what were you thinking? I know. No, I don't think you do. Going 7 days without your medication could have killed you. Not might have. Could have. You're lucky you only had one seizure. You could have gone into status epilepticus, where the seizures don't stop. Your brain could have sustained permanent damage. Tears started sliding down my face. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. You call me. You call emergency services. You go to the ER. You don't risk your life because of family drama. I just wanted them to take me seriously. Dr. Chen's expression softened. And they will now. But promise me, Leah. Promise me you will never do this again. I promise. She examined me thoroughly, checking my reflexes, my cognitive responses. You're going to be fine physically. But I'm prescribing 2 weeks off work. You need to rest. Let your brain recover. And I'm writing you a 3-month supply of medication. I don't want you worrying about running out. After she left, I lay in the quiet room and tried to process everything that had happened. My sister had deliberately tried to make me have a seizure. My parents had enabled her. My entire family had failed me in the most fundamental way possible. Around 8 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. Frank and Diane walked in, both looking like they'd aged 10 years in the past few hours. Diane was crying before she even reached my bed. Leah, honey, we're so sorry. We didn't know. We didn't understand. Frank stood awkwardly near the door. Your sister confessed everything to the police. She told them she'd been stealing your medication for months. She said she wanted you to look unstable in court. I didn't say anything. I just looked at them, these people who were supposed to protect me. We failed you, Frank said, his voice cracking. We've always thought Bryn needed more attention because she was struggling. We didn't see that we were enabling her. We didn't take your epilepsy seriously. Diane sat in the chair next to my bed. When the paramedics said you could have died, I thought my heart would stop. My daughter, my little girl, and we've been treating you like you were the problem. You called me selfish, I said quietly. You told me sharing is caring when she was stealing medication that keeps me alive. I know. Diane wiped her eyes. There's no excuse. We believed Bryn when she said you were exaggerating your condition. We've seen you live such a normal life that we forgot how much work you put into managing your health. Frank moved closer. The police told us more. Bryn admitted she's been struggling with substance abuse for 2 years. She started with your pills, then moved on to other things. All those times we gave her money, she was using it for drugs. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. I'd been right about so much, but being right didn't feel like winning. She told us about the real estate developer too, Diane said. She was going to sell Margaret's bed and breakfast and use the money to run away with him. She lied about everything. I tried to tell you, I said. We know. We should have listened. Frank rubbed his face. Leah, we can't undo the past, but we want to make things right going forward. If you'll let us... I looked at them for a long moment. These imperfect people who'd hurt me so badly, but who were at least trying to face what they'd done. I need you to understand something, I said. My epilepsy isn't something I exaggerate or use for attention. It's a real condition that I manage every single day. And when you dismissed it, when you told me I was being dramatic, you made me feel like I didn't deserve to protect my own health. You do, Diane said. You deserve so much more than how we treated you. If we're going to have any relationship going forward, that can never happen again. The first time you dismiss my health or make excuses for Bryn, I'm done. Do you understand? They both nodded. We understand, Frank said. And Leah, for what it's worth, we'll testify in court next week. We'll tell the truth about everything. After they left, I felt strange. Not forgiven them exactly, but maybe willing to see if they could actually change. People made mistakes. The question was whether they learned from them. Over the next few days, I learned more about what had happened after I was taken to the hospital. The police had interviewed Bryn for hours. She'd confessed to everything, her lawyer present, but unable to stop her from telling the truth. She'd been stealing my medication for months, initially taking pills to stay awake, then selling some online to make money. When she found out about the inheritance fight, she'd seen an opportunity. If she could make me look unstable, if she could cause me to have a seizure in public, everyone would think I was too unreliable to manage the bed and breakfast. She'd replaced some of my pills with caffeine tablets, hoping I wouldn't notice until it was too late. She'd broken into my apartment to steal the final batch right before court. The district attorney decided to press charges: theft of prescription medication, reckless endangerment, and tampering with evidence. Bryn faced potential jail time, but something else happened too. A former friend of Bryn's named Chloe came forward. She was the one who'd sent the anonymous email with the Instagram photos. She testified that Bryn had bragged about stealing my medication, laughing about how I'd never prove it. She thought it was funny, Chloe told the police. She said Leah was always the perfect one, always so responsible, and it was time someone knocked her down. Reading the police report made me feel sick. This wasn't just sibling rivalry. This was calculated cruelty. Douglas visited me in the hospital the day before I was discharged. He brought flowers and a big smile. Judge Holloway wants to resume the hearing next week. Are you going to be ready? Absolutely. Your parents have provided written statements supporting your claim. They've admitted that Bryn lied about her relationship with Margaret. We also have the contract between Bryn and the real estate developer, proving she intended to destroy the property. He set his briefcase on the table and pulled out documents. Leah, we're going to win this, decisively. What about Bryn? Her lawyer is working on a plea deal. Since she confessed and she's agreeing to drop her claim to the inheritance entirely, the DA might be lenient. She'll probably get probation, community service, and mandatory treatment. She's dropping her claim? Douglas nodded. She came to see me yesterday. She wants to meet with you. I stared at him. What? She's out on bail. She wants to apologize in person. You don't have to see her if you don't want to. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to tell her to stay away forever. But another part needed to hear what she had to say, needed to see if there was any genuine remorse behind the tears and confessions. Tell her she can come tomorrow. One time. Supervised. The next evening, Bryn walked into my apartment. Douglas was there, sitting in the corner as a witness. Bryn looked terrible. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup. She wore jeans and a plain sweater, nothing designer. She stood awkwardly near the door, not coming closer until I gestured to the couch. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly. I didn't respond. I just waited. I don't know how to explain what I did. I don't know how to make it make sense, because it doesn't make sense. I was jealous of you, Leah. I've been jealous my whole life. Of what? Mom and Dad gave you everything. They gave me money and excuses. They gave you respect. Everyone respects you. You're talented and responsible and strong. I'm 25 years old, and I've never accomplished anything. I've never been good at anything except manipulating people. She twisted her hands together. When Grandmother died and left that will, I saw a chance to finally have something valuable, something that was mine. But then you contested it, and I realized you'd probably win because you actually deserved it. So I tried to sabotage you by trying to kill me. I didn't think it would kill you. I swear I didn't. I thought you'd just have a small seizure, look confused, and the judge would think you were unreliable. I didn't understand how dangerous it was. You replaced my medication with fake pills, Bryn. You knew exactly what you were doing. She started crying. I know, and there's no excuse. I was high half the time, making terrible decisions, and I convinced myself that you were faking your epilepsy for attention because that's what I would do. I projected all my own lying onto you. She pulled a document from her bag. I'm dropping my claim to the inheritance. The bed and breakfast should be yours. Grandmother knew you'd take care of it. She knew I'd destroy it. And she was right. She handed me the paper. It was a legal document formally withdrawing her claim. I'm checking into rehab tomorrow, she said. 60 days inpatient. I'm going to actually try to get better this time. Not because a judge ordered it, but because I need to. I've become someone I hate. I looked at this woman who shared my DNA, who'd grown up in the same house, who'd tried to hurt me in the worst possible way. I don't forgive you, I said. I don't expect you to. I hope you get help. I hope you actually change. But I need you to stay away from me for a long time. Maybe forever. Bryn nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to become someone who would never do what I did to you. She stood up and walked to the door. Before she left, she looked back one more time. You deserved a better sister. I'm sorry I couldn't be that person. Then she was gone, and I sat in the silence of my apartment, feeling things I couldn't name. Anger and pity and grief and relief all tangled together. Douglas spoke from the corner. How are you feeling? I don't know, I said honestly. But I think I'm ready to move forward. 1 week later, I walked back into Judge Holloway's courtroom. This time, I was fully medicated, well-rested, and ready. Douglas walked beside me, carrying a briefcase full of documents that told the truth of my relationship with Margaret. The courtroom was quieter this time. No spectators except Frank and Diane, who sat behind me. Bryn's lawyer was there, but Bryn was not. She'd already withdrawn her claim, so there was nothing left to contest. Judge Holloway welcomed me back with a gentle smile. Miss Walsh, it's good to see you looking healthier. How are you feeling? Much better, Your Honor. Thank you for asking. Good. Let's proceed. Douglas presented his case methodically. He showed Margaret's journals, where she wrote extensively about her hopes that I would inherit the bed and breakfast. He presented evidence of my visits over the years, photos and receipts and testimony from people in Camden who remembered me helping Margaret. He showed the contract between Bryn and the real estate developer, proving she'd planned to demolish the property. Frank took the stand and testified that he and Diane had been wrong about Bryn's relationship with Margaret. We believed what we wanted to believe, he said. We thought Bryn needed the property more, But need and deserve are different things. Leah deserves this. Diane testified next, admitting that Bryn had lied about visiting Margaret, lied about her intentions, lied about everything. No one contested my claim anymore. The evidence was overwhelming. Judge Holloway listened to everything, taking notes, asking occasional questions. Finally, she looked up from her papers. "I've been a judge for 27 years, she said. "I've presided over thousands of cases. This one has been among the most disturbing." She recounted the medication theft, the seizure, the discovery of tampering. "Miss Leah Walsh, your grandmother's will was somewhat ambiguous, but the evidence before me is not. Margaret Walsh clearly intended for you to inherit this property. The journals make that abundantly clear. Furthermore, you've demonstrated both the capability and the genuine desire to preserve what she built." She signed a document with a flourish. "I am awarding the bed and breakfast, located at 17 Ocean View Road, in Camden, Maine, along with all associated assets, to Leah Walsh." Relief washed over me so powerfully that I had to grip the table. But Judge Holloway wasn't finished. "I want to address something broader here. Family is supposed to be a source of support and safety. What happened in this case was a betrayal of that sacred trust. Miss Bryn Walsh endangered her sister's life for money. Your parents, Mr. and Mrs. Walsh, enabled that behavior through years of dismissing Leah's legitimate medical needs." She looked directly at Frank and Diane. "I'm ordering you both to attend family counseling as a condition of maintaining any relationship with your daughter. You need to understand the harm you've caused and learn to do better." They nodded, both looking appropriately chastened. Then the judge looked at me. "Miss Walsh, you showed remarkable courage. You stood up for yourself when your own family wouldn't support you. That takes extraordinary strength. I commend you." "Thank you, Your Honor." This court is adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Douglas shook my hand. "Congratulations. You did it." I hugged him. This man who'd believed me when my own family hadn't. "Thank you for fighting for me. You fought for yourself. I just provided legal backup." The criminal case against Bryn was resolved 2 weeks later. She pleaded guilty to theft of prescription medication and reckless endangerment. As part of a plea deal, she received 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service at a neurological health nonprofit, and mandatory completion of an addiction treatment program. There was also a restraining order requiring her to stay at least 100 feet away from me for 3 years. I was satisfied with the outcome. I didn't want Bryn in prison. I wanted her to get help and understand the magnitude of what she'd done. Working at a neurological health nonprofit meant she'd meet other people with epilepsy, other people whose lives depended on medication. Maybe that would teach her what our family never did. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of Margaret's bed and breakfast, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic Ocean. I'd moved to Camden in early spring, spending weeks cleaning and renovating. I found old photographs of Margaret throughout the property and framed them, creating a gallery wall in the main hallway. I named the place Margaret's Haven, having a new sign carved from driftwood and hung above the front door. The first guests arrived in May, a young couple celebrating their anniversary. They loved the charm of the place, the careful preservation of its history. I hired 3 people to help me run the bed and breakfast. A chef named Marcus who made incredible breakfasts, a housekeeper named Linda who treated the rooms like they were her own home, and a manager named Grace who handled bookings so I could take time off when needed for my health. The business thrived. Guests loved the personal attention, the homemade muffins using Margaret's recipes, the view from the porch. We got glowing reviews online. I was making enough money to live comfortably, pay my staff well, and invest back into the property. My relationship with Frank and Diane improved slowly. They attended the court, ordered counseling, and actually seemed to learn from it. They visited the bed and breakfast once in July, walking through the rooms with tears in their eyes. "Your grandmother would be so proud," Diane said. "This is exactly what she wanted." "We should have supported you from the beginning," Frank added. We can see now what you've built here. I set clear boundaries with them. We talked on the phone once a week. They could visit twice a year, with advance notice. And the moment they dismissed my health or made excuses for Bryn, I was done. They agreed without argument. I received occasional updates about Bryn through my parents. She completed her 60-day treatment program and got a job at a coffee shop. She was living in a small apartment, attending meetings, staying sober. She wrote me letters occasionally, not expecting responses. I read them and put them away. I wasn't ready to forgive, might never be ready, but I felt a small measure of peace, knowing she was trying to change. One evening in September, I sat on the porch watching the sunset. A couple staying at the bed and breakfast joined me, a woman about my age and her husband. "This place is magical," the woman said. "How did you end up running it?" I told her a condensed version of the story, about my grandmother, about the inheritance fight, about learning to stand up for myself. "How did you stay strong through all that?" she asked. I thought carefully before answering. I realized that my health and my dignity weren't negotiable. I almost died trying to prove myself to people who didn't value me. But I learned that the opinions of people who don't respect you don't matter. The woman nodded, clearly moved by the story. Later that night, alone in the small apartment I'd created on the 3rd floor of the bed and breakfast, I reflected on everything that had happened. For years, I'd believed that being a good daughter and sister meant sacrificing my own needs. I'd thought if I just tried harder, bent further, gave more, my family would finally see me. But I'd learned something crucial. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Your health, your safety, your well-being, these aren't selfish priorities. They're survival. The people who truly love you will never ask you to endanger yourself for their comfort. And the ones who do don't deserve a place in your life, no matter how much DNA you share. Grandmother Margaret used to tell me something when I was young, struggling with my epilepsy diagnosis, feeling different and broken. She'd say, "Leah, you teach people how to treat you. Show them you're valuable by treating yourself as valuable first." For too long, I'd taught my family that I was disposable, that my needs came last, that my health could be dismissed. Never again. Today, I run a beautiful business that honors the woman who actually valued me. I have boundaries that protect my peace. I take my medication without shame or fear. And I've learned that sometimes the family you need isn't the one you're born into. It's the one you create through mutual respect and genuine care. Grace, Marcus, and Linda have become like family to me. They ask about my health. They make sure I take breaks when I need them. They celebrate my successes and support me through challenges. That's what real family looks like. If you're struggling with people who minimize your pain or steal your peace, I want you to hear this. You deserve better. Your health matters. Your boundaries matter. Your life matters. And it's never too late to fight for yourself. I almost died proving that point. But I survived. And now, finally, I'm living. I'm living in a house by the ocean that smells like fresh baked bread and sea air. I'm building something meaningful with my own hands. I'm surrounded by people who respect me. And every morning, I wake up grateful that I found the courage to fight for the life I deserved. Margaret was right about everything. Some places do have souls, and this place's soul is made of all the love and care poured into it over generations. I'm honored to be its keeper now. As I take my evening medication, looking out at the stars over the Atlantic, I think about how far I've come. From that courtroom floor convulsing and helpless, to this moment of peace and purpose. The journey was brutal, but it was worth it. And if my story helps even one person understand their worth, understand that they deserve to fight for themselves, then every painful moment mattered. You are not dramatic for protecting your health. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not wrong for expecting your family to treat you with basic human decency. You are worthy. You are valuable. And you deserve people in your life who recognize that. Never forget it. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't respect your needs? How did you find the courage to put yourself first? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and realize they're not alone in their struggles. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories about finding strength in impossible situations. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that their health and well-being matter. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it brought you some comfort, some validation, or maybe just the reminder that you're stronger than you think. Remember, you deserve respect, you deserve safety, and you deserve people who celebrate your strength rather than exploit your vulnerabilities. Take care of yourselves out there, protect your peace, and never apologize for choosing your own well-being. Until next time, this is Leah, reminding you that the life you deserve is worth fighting for.